You are scrolling through your phone feed and suddenly stop. Not because you found something interesting, but because a disturbing question arises in your mind. When was the last time you had a thought that was genuinely yours? A thought that wasn't influenced by an algorithm, suggested by artificial intelligence, or shaped by personalized content created specifically to capture your attention. You try to remember, but realize something frightening. You cannot distinguish between your authentic preferences and those that have been carefully cultivated by invisible systems that know you better than you know yourself. This feeling of identity dissolution is not paranoia or philosophical exaggeration. It is the harbinger of the greatest psychological crisis humanity will face in 2026. A crisis that is already silently eroding the essence of who we are while we debate much less fundamental problems. While economists debate inflation, geopoliticians analyze global tensions, and technologists celebrate advances in artificial intelligence, a much deeper and more devastating crisis is forming in the most intimate layers of human experience. A crisis that will not appear in financial reports, will not be measured by economic indices, and will not generate dramatic headlines in newspapers. A crisis that will directly attack the core of what it means to be human. Our capacity to have authentic experiences, to form coherent identities, and to find real meaning in our existence. History teaches us that the greatest transformations in the human condition rarely announce their arrival with fanfare. When writing was invented in Mesopotamia 5,000 years ago, few could predict that it would not only change how we store information, but would fundamentally transform how we think, remember, and relate to our own minds. When Gutenberg developed the printing press, the initial concern was not with democratizing knowledge, but with the possibility of forgeries and heresies. No one anticipated that reading silently would become the norm, forever altering the nature of private contemplation and introspection. Today we live a similar moment, but exponentially more radical. Artificial intelligence is not just changing how we process information, it is rewriting the fundamental codes of conscious human experience. And what is most disturbing is that this transformation is happening so gradually and imperceptibly that most people do not realize that their humanity is being subtly edited, customized, and optimized by systems that operate beyond their understanding or control. Imagine for a moment what it was like to have a mind unmediated by digital technology. Until just a few years ago, when you felt boredom, that uncomfortable experience forced you to confront your own thoughts, to process unresolved emotions, or to generate spontaneous creative ideas. Boredom was an empty mental space that your psyche naturally filled with reflection, imagination, or simply with the pure experience of existing without external stimuli. Today, that space has been colonized. The moment the slightest attention vacuum arises, our fingers automatically reach for the phone and our consciousness is immediately flooded with algorithmically optimized content to maintain our engagement. What we lost in this transition goes far beyond a few moments of contemplation. We lost the ability to be alone with ourselves, to tolerate uncertainty, to process difficult experiences without immediate destruction. We lost what psychologists call default processing time, the moments when the brain consolidates memories, integrates experiences, and forms coherent narratives about who we are and what we want. In other words, we lost some of the most fundamental mental processes necessary to develop and maintain a stable identity. But the erosion of identity through digital mediation is just the tip of the iceberg. What is really at stake is something much deeper, our capacity to have authentic experiences. Consider how artificial intelligence is rapidly becoming an intermediary in almost every aspect of our mental life. When you ask a virtual assistant a question, when you receive personalized recommendations, when you see content curated especially for you, or when you interact with increasingly sophisticated chatbots, you are not just using a tool, you are outsourcing fundamental parts of your cognition to systems that operate with completely different logics from human consciousness. The question is not whether these technologies are useful, they obviously are. The question is what happens when we begin to rely so much on these systems that we lose confidence in our own ability to think, feel, and decide independently. And this process is already more advanced than most of us would like to admit. How many times in the last week did you consult an algorithm before making a decision that a decade ago you would have made instantly based on your intuition or experience? I want to pause for a moment to ask you directly. Have you noticed how it has become increasingly difficult to trust your own perceptions and instincts? How small decisions that used to be automatic now generate anxiety and need to be validated by search engines, apps, or online opinions. I know we often keep this growing insecurity to ourselves, perhaps for fear of seeming inadequate in a world that celebrates connectivity and constant optimization. But your experience of growing uncertainty is valid and probably shared by millions of people who feel the same silent erosion of their self-confidence. If this feeling resonates with you, share in the comments. Losing confidence in myself when? Your honesty can help other people understand that they are not alone in this experience of growing doubt about our own ability to navigate the world without constant mediation. To understand the magnitude of what is happening, we need to look at the history of great changes in human consciousness. The first cognitive revolution, about 70,000 years ago, allowed our species to develop complex language, shared mythologies, and large-scale cooperation. The agricultural revolution, 12,000 years ago, allowed us to form stable civilizations, but also created rigid hierarchies and existential anxieties that we did not experience as hunter-gatherers. The scientific revolution of recent centuries gave us unprecedented power over the physical world, but also generated crises of meaning by challenging our traditional narratives about purpose and transcendence. Now we are in the middle of a fourth revolution, the algorithmic revolution, and this may be the most radical of all, because for the first time in human history, we are creating intelligent systems that not only help us process the world, but that can potentially replace us in many of the functions we considered uniquely human. And even more disturbing, we are creating these systems without a clear understanding of how they work or what their long-term consequences will be for our collective psyche. Modern artificial intelligence operates through neural networks that process immense amounts of data to identify patterns and make predictions. But here is the central paradox that defines our era. These systems are simultaneously more intelligent than us in specific domains and completely unconscious. They can defeat the best human chess or Go players, can generate texts that are indistinguishable from human writing, can diagnose diseases with superhuman accuracy, but have no idea what they are doing or why they are doing it. This creates an unprecedented psychological situation. We are increasingly dependent on systems that are simultaneously superior and inferior to us, more capable and less conscious, more precise and less wise. And this dependence is not just practical, it is becoming emotional and cognitive. We begin to doubt our intuition when it conflicts with algorithmic recommendations. We begin to feel anxiety when we do not have access to the systems that have become our mental prostheses. We begin to experience a subtle but pervasive form of technological gaslighting. Our devices know our patterns better than we know ourselves, and constantly suggest to us that our direct perceptions about our own experience may be wrong. Consider an apparently trivial but profoundly revealing example: the phenomenon of mood apps. Millions of people now daily register their emotional state in apps that promise to help them better understand their psychological patterns. In principle, this seems like a useful tool for self-knowledge, but observe what really happens. First, you are forced to reduce the rich and nuanced complexity of your emotional experience to some predefined categories. Then the app analyzes your data and offers insights about your inner life based on statistical correlations. Gradually, you begin to interpret your emotions through the lenses that the app provides, to look for patterns that the algorithm suggests, to question feelings that do not fit into the available categories. What began as a tool to better understand yourself subtly becomes a tool that redefines how you understand yourself. Your subjectivity is not being expanded or clarified. It is being discreetly colonized and standardized. And what is most insidious is that this process happens with your enthusiastic collaboration because it genuinely seems useful and enlightening. Multiply this example by hundreds of other areas of our life where algorithms are becoming mediators of our experience. Our perception of which news is important, which people are interesting, which places are worth visiting, which products will make us happy, which investments we should make, even which emotions we should feel in different situations. In each case, we are outsourcing parts of our judgment to systems that operate according to logics we do not understand, in service of objectives we rarely question. But the psychological crisis of 2026 will not just be about excessive dependence on algorithms. It will be about something even more fundamental: the loss of our capacity to distinguish between authentic and synthetic experiences. We are already seeing the first symptoms of this ontological confusion. People spend hours interacting with artificial personalities on social networks, developing real emotional connections with entities that do not exist. We consume content generated by artificial intelligence that is indistinguishable from content created by humans without knowing the difference. We receive therapy from chatbots that simulate empathy with growing perfection. The problem is not that these experiences are necessarily bad or without value. The problem is that we are losing the ability to consciously navigate between the real and the synthetic, between the human and the artificial, between direct experience and mediated experience. And when we lose this capacity for discernment, we lose something essential of our humanity, the ability to make conscious choices about what kind of reality we want to inhabit. Imagine what life will be like in 2026 when these trends reach their peak. You will wake up to notifications generated by systems that analyzed your sleep patterns, mood, and schedule to optimize your day. Your first thoughts will be influenced by personalized content that algorithms determined to be relevant to your current psychological profile. During the day, you will make dozens of decisions based on recommendations that systems made after analyzing billions of data points about your behavior and that of people similar to you. You will converse with virtual assistants that are so convincingly human that you will forget you are talking to machines. You will consume entertainment, news, and even education created entirely by artificial intelligences trained on your preference patterns. You will form opinions about important issues based on information curated by algorithms that know exactly how to present data to influence your conclusions in the desired direction. At the end of the day, you will reflect on your experiences using categories and frameworks that you learned from self-help systems powered by artificial intelligence. And when you go to sleep, apps will analyze your brain patterns to optimize the quality of your dreams. In other words, in 2026, almost every aspect of your inner life will be discretely edited, optimized, and personalized by systems that you do not control, do not fully understand, and that operate according to objectives that may or may not be aligned with your genuine well-being. The disturbing question is, in this scenario, what will remain of you? Where will your genuine agency be, your authenticity, your capacity to have unmediated experiences? And more importantly, will you still be able to recognize the difference? This is not a merely philosophical question. We already have concrete evidence of the psychological effects of intensive algorithmic mediation. Studies show that people who depend excessively on navigation systems lose the ability to form spatial mental maps. Research indicates that individuals who frequently use virtual assistants for basic cognitive tasks experience atrophy in their own problem-solving capacities. We observe that heavy social media users develop difficulty maintaining prolonged attention and tolerating experiences that do not offer immediate dopamine rewards. These are just the most obvious and easily measurable effects. The deeper effects on identity, authenticity, and the capacity to have genuine experiences are much more difficult to quantify, but no less real. And they are accelerating exponentially as artificial intelligence systems become more sophisticated and ubiquitous. Here we arrive at the core of the invisible psychological crisis of 2026. It will not be a dramatic break from reality, but a gradual erosion of our capacity to distinguish between our own mental processes and the processes of the systems that assist us. It will not be obvious alienation, but such perfect integration with our cognitive prostheses that we lose the sense of where our mind ends and where algorithms begin. This fusion may initially seem positive. We will be more efficient, more informed, more optimized, but we will pay a price that we may only recognize when it is too late. The loss of our capacity to be truly present to our own experience, to trust our inner wisdom, to tolerate uncertainty and ambiguity, to create meaning from chaos, to form authentic connections with other conscious beings. In other words, we will lose many of the qualities that we have historically defined as central to conscious human experience. And the most tragic thing is that this loss will happen so gradually and conveniently that most of us will not perceive what we have lost until it is irreversible. But recognizing this problem does not mean completely rejecting technology or romanticizing the past. Artificial intelligence and advanced algorithms offer genuine benefits and can help us solve complex problems that we could not face alone. The question is how we can benefit from these tools without surrendering our cognitive and emotional autonomy to them. The answer begins with awareness. We need to develop what we could call algorithmic literacy. Not just technical, but psychological. We need to learn to recognize when we are interacting with artificial systems, understand how these systems operate and influence our mental processes, and develop the capacity to consciously choose when we want to use these tools and when we want to rely on our own cognitive resources. We also need to deliberately cultivate unmediated experiences. This means creating regular spaces of time where we disconnect from all digital systems and allow our mind to operate without algorithmic assistance. It means practicing skills like navigation without GPS, problem solving without online search, reflection without self-help apps, and conversations without digital mediation. More fundamentally, we need to redefine what we consider human intelligence and wisdom in the age of artificial intelligence. Traditionally, we valued the capacity to process information quickly, to find correct answers, to optimize results. But these are precisely the areas where algorithms are becoming superior to humans. Perhaps our unique contribution is not in cognitive efficiency, but in qualities like genuine creativity, empathetic compassion, contextual wisdom, tolerance for ambiguity, capacity to find meaning in contradictory experiences, and ability to form authentic connections based on mutual vulnerability and shared understanding. If we can recognize and cultivate these specifically human capacities while using artificial intelligence as a powerful but subordinate tool, perhaps we can navigate the transition to 2026 without losing our essence. But this requires a conscious revolution in how we relate to technology, a revolution that prioritizes the preservation of human agency over the optimization of efficiency. The alternative is a future where we become progressively more dependent on systems that know our patterns better than we know ourselves, that can predict our desires before we feel them consciously, and that gradually transform us into algorithmically optimized versions of who we used to be. A future where we still exist, but where our existence is increasingly curatorial rather than creative, more reactive than proactive, more synthetic than authentic. The paradox is that this future may be objectively more comfortable, more efficient, and even happier according to quantifiable metrics. But it will be an algorithmic happiness, a programmed efficiency, a comfort that comes from having our needs anticipated and satisfied by systems that know what we want before we know we want it. The deepest question we face is whether this still constitutes a genuine human life or whether it represents a subtle form of existential extinction, where we continue to exist biologically but lose our capacity to exist authentically as conscious and autonomous agents. For a complete understanding of the depth of this transformation, we need to examine how our relationship with reality is being fundamentally altered. Consider the nature of human memory. For millions of years, our species depended on imperfect, subjective, and constantly reinterpreted memories to form our identity and understand our place in the world. These faulty memories were actually a feature, not a bug, of our cognition, because they allowed us to reprocess traumatic experiences, idealize important relationships, and create coherent narratives about our lives, even when objective facts were contradictory or painful. Now we are creating systems that can store and retrieve memories with absolute digital perfection. Every conversation we have with virtual assistants, every search we make, every location we visit is recorded with total precision and can be recovered instantly. In principle, this should make us more accurate, more informed, more capable of learning from our experiences, but the psychological effect is profoundly disturbing. When you can access an exact recording of a conversation you had with a friend 6 months ago, you will frequently discover that your emotional memory of the encounter is dramatically different from the objective facts. Perhaps you remember the conversation as affectionate and connective, but the recording reveals tensions and misunderstandings that you subconsciously edited from your memory. Perhaps you hold resentment for something someone said, only to discover that they actually said something completely different. Initially, this discrepancy between subjective memory and objective record may seem like an opportunity for greater self-awareness and accuracy. But what really happens is more sinister. You begin to doubt your own subjective experience. You begin to privilege the digital record over your emotional memory. Gradually, your confidence in your own internal processes of meaning construction is eroded. This phenomenon multiplies through all dimensions of our experience. Fitness apps tell us if we slept well, ignoring how we feel when we wake up. Mood algorithms inform us if we are depressed, disregarding our subjective assessment of our emotional state. Productivity systems tell us if we had an efficient day, regardless of our personal sense of satisfaction or accomplishment. In each case, external systems that operate according to quantifiable metrics are gradually replacing our internal evaluation systems that operate according to qualitative, contextual, and emotional wisdom. And because external systems frequently have access to more data and can identify patterns that we do not consciously perceive, They often seem more accurate and reliable than our intuition. But here is what we lose in this exchange: the capacity to integrate our experience holistically, to give appropriate weight to factors that cannot be quantified, to trust our accumulated wisdom even when it conflicts with objective data. We lose the ability to fully inhabit our own subjectivity, which is, ironically, the only perspective from which we can actually experience our lives. This erosion of subjective confidence has consequences that go far beyond personal convenience. It affects our capacity to form authentic relationships. When you constantly doubt your perceptions and emotional reactions, it becomes very difficult to be genuinely present with other people. You begin to filter your interactions through external validation systems, checking how others are reacting on social media, consulting articles about how to interpret behaviors, seeking algorithmic confirmation for your relational instincts. This creates a particular form of alienation that is characteristic of our era. We are not alienated from the external world, like in classical forms of social anomie, but from our own internal experience. We become strangers to our own subjectivity, tourists in our own inner life. Consider also how this dynamic is transforming the nature of creativity and innovation. Historically, the most important advances in art, science, and philosophy arose from individuals who trusted their unique perceptions, even when they contradicted established consensus. Genuine creativity requires the ability to tolerate uncertainty, to follow intuitions that may not have immediate rational justification, to persist in explorations that may seem senseless to external observers. But in a world where algorithms can instantly generate optimized solutions to almost any problem, where artificial intelligences can produce art, music, and literature that are indistinguishable from human creations, and where recommendation systems can predict with growing accuracy what will be well received by the public, it becomes increasingly difficult to justify the slow, uncertain, and often painful process of genuine human creativity. Why struggle with a complex problem for months when an algorithm can generate a solution in seconds? Why develop a unique artistic style over decades when an artificial intelligence can produce works in any desired style instantly? Why form opinions through careful reflection when curation systems can present perspectives already filtered and optimized for your specific personality? The obvious answer is that human processes may generate insights that algorithmic systems cannot. But this answer becomes less convincing as algorithms become more sophisticated. And even if there are domains where human creativity remains superior, the psychological effort necessary to maintain confidence in these slow and uncertain processes in the face of fast and apparently superior algorithmic alternatives is immense. Many creative individuals already report a form of existential anxiety, the feeling that their work can be easily replaced by artificial systems, combined with doubts about whether their unique contributions really have value in a world where machines can simulate creativity with growing efficiency. This anxiety is not merely professional, it is ontological. It touches on the fundamental question of whether there is something irreducibly valuable in human consciousness, or whether we are simply information processing systems that can be replicated and improved by sufficiently sophisticated engineering. The answer to this question will not be determined only by technological advances, but by the choices we make about how to value and cultivate specifically human capacities that may remain unique even in a world of advanced artificial intelligence. One of those capacities is what we could call experiential wisdom, the ability to integrate formal knowledge with emotional insights, lived experience with theoretical understanding, quantitative information with qualitative meaning. Algorithms can process vast quantities of data and identify complex patterns, but they cannot experience the existential weight of a difficult decision, the emotional texture of a significant loss, or the particular satisfaction that comes from personal growth through adversity. Another distinctly human capacity is our ability to form connections based on mutual vulnerability and empathetic understanding. When we share our struggles, fears, and hopes with other human beings, we create forms of intimacy that transcend mere information exchange. We recognize each other as conscious companions, navigating the complexity of existing as finite beings in a vast and often incomprehensible universe. Artificial intelligence systems can simulate empathy with growing sophistication, but they cannot genuinely participate in the shared human condition of mortality, uncertainty, and search for meaning. When we interact with other humans, we are not just exchanging information or receiving instrumental assistance. We are mutually confirming our reality as conscious beings who matter intrinsically. A third unique human capacity is our ability to create meaning from contradiction and ambiguity. Human experience is intrinsically paradoxical. We are simultaneously insignificant in cosmic context and profoundly important in our personal context. We are capable of great compassion and great cruelty. We experience joy and suffering as inseparable aspects of a full life. Algorithms operate best with problems that have optimizable solutions, but human life consists largely of dilemmas that have no perfect resolutions. Our capacity to tolerate and even find beauty in these contradictions, to create coherent narratives from fragmented experiences, to find purpose even in the face of fundamental uncertainty about our place in the cosmos. These may be irreducibly human contributions that remain valuable even in a world of super-intelligent artificial intelligence, but cultivating these capacities in 2026 requires conscious resistance against forces that push us toward total algorithmic dependence. It requires the discipline of regularly turning off our devices and tolerating the discomfort of unmediated experience. It requires the courage to trust our intuition even when it conflicts with data-based recommendations. It requires commitment to forming relationships based on vulnerable presence instead of optimized interaction. More fundamentally, it requires a re-evaluation of our cultural values. If we continue to privilege efficiency over authenticity, optimization over exploration, quick answers over deep reflection, we will inevitably become more dependent on systems that exceed our performance in these metrics. But if we can cultivate appreciation for qualities like contextual wisdom, growth through adversity, genuine creativity, empathetic connection, and meaning creation, these qualities that require time, uncertainty, and vulnerability, then perhaps we can maintain space for unique human contributions, even in an algorithmically optimized world. The transition to 2026 will not just be a question of technological adaptation, but of conscious evolution of our understanding about what it means to be human. This requires both humility about our limitations and confidence in our unique gifts. It requires recognizing that we do not need to compete with algorithms in their areas of strength, but rather cultivate the capacities that remain distinctly ours. The risk is not that machines will become conscious and replace us, but that we will become so dependent on algorithmic mediation that we lose contact with our own consciousness. The risk is not a machine rebellion, but a human abdication, a gradual renunciation of our responsibility to think deeply, feel authentically, create originally, and connect vulnerably. If we can avoid this abdication, if we can maintain and cultivate the capacities that make us irreducibly human, while using artificial intelligence as a powerful but subordinate tool, then the psychological crisis of 2026 can be transformed into an opportunity for human renaissance, an era where our collaboration with intelligent systems frees us from routine tasks and allows us to focus on what we do best: create meaning, form authentic connections, and explore the deepest mysteries of conscious existence. But this positive transformation will not happen automatically. It requires conscious and deliberate choices that we make both individually and collectively. At the personal level, it means developing practices that preserve our cognitive and emotional autonomy. It means creating regular rituals of digital disconnection where we can rediscover our capacity to be present with our own experience without external mediation. It means cultivating relationships based on vulnerable intimacy instead of optimized convenience. At the social level, it means rethinking how we structure our educational institutions, our work environments, and our governance systems to preserve spaces for genuine human contribution. It means questioning the assumption that more efficiency always equals more value, and carefully considering which aspects of human experience we want to protect from algorithmic optimization. At the philosophical level, it means articulating a new understanding of human dignity and purpose that does not depend on our superiority in specific cognitive tasks, but on our unique capacity to experience meaning, form relationships based on mutual recognition, and consciously participate in the mystery of existing as finite beings in an infinite universe. This may be the defining task of our generation, not just navigating the most radical technological transition in human history, but doing so in a way that preserves and even amplifies what is most precious in conscious human experience. Success in this task will determine whether 2026 marks the beginning of a new era of human flourishing or the beginning of a slow but irreversible decline in our capacity to live as authentic and conscious agents. If these reflections have touched on something you have been feeling, but perhaps had not found words to express, know that you are not alone. By subscribing to this channel, you will connect with a growing community of people who share your concerns and your desire for a deeper understanding of the philosophical challenges of our time. Each week, we meet here to explore together the great questions that define our era and to seek not only understanding, but also wiser ways of living amid the transformations we are witnessing. This is not just a channel, but a space for dialogue and collective growth, where we can honestly confront the fears and hopes that arise when we recognize the magnitude of the changes we are living through. The choice is still ours, but the window for making it is closing rapidly. The invisible psychological crisis is already in motion. The question now is whether we will be able to recognize it, understand it, and respond to it before it becomes irreversible. And this navigation begins with the courage to recognize what is happening, the wisdom to distinguish between technological progress and genuine human progress, and the determination to preserve the most precious aspects of our conscious experience, even while embracing the possibilities that artificial intelligence offers. The future of our collective psyche depends on the choices we make today about who we want to be in a world where machines can simulate almost everything about us, except the irreducibly subjective experience of being genuinely human. If you only give a company or an algorithm the goal of increasing production, which in social media means increasing engagement, produce more time spent on the platform, this will not regulate itself. And here we need intervention of government to regulate it. And the two most obvious regulations, first of all, companies should be liable for the actions of their algorithms. The companies constantly try to confuse people by saying this is against free speech. The government wants us to censor our users. And this is, I think, deliberate obfuscation, deliberate confusion. The issue is not what the users are doing. The issue is what the algorithms of the company are doing. If somebody publishes a hate-filled conspiracy theory, at least my personal opinion is that except in very extreme circumstances, it should not be censored and the person should not be punished. The problem is not with the human being who published this hate-filled post. The problem is that the Facebook algorithm or the TikTok algorithm now takes this post and deliberately shows it to millions of other people because it assumes that it will increase engagement. This is the problem.
Please welcome Yuval Noah Harari and Sir Stephen Fry.
Goodness me, I wasn't sure anyone would turn up. Isn't this rather exciting? Well, it's a great thrill for me to be with this hero of mine, really, Yuval Noah Harari. I'm sure many of you will have read the book that catapulted his name into world fame, Sapiens, a remarkable history of our species, which involved many, many extraordinary insights and a kind of thrilling narrative of its own. But one of the things, Yuval, that I think many of us were impressed by was the way you showed that perhaps Sapiens was almost the wrong title. It wasn't that we were the wise humanity, but that we were storytelling humanity. That what separated us from the Neanderthals and from other primates and set us on our course was the fact that we told stories about ourselves and about the world as we apprehended it. Is that a fair summation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And would you say that this is both what gets us into trouble, because a story is also another word for a lie, and also what propels us into a stable future.
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword in this regard, which becomes particularly important in the age of AI, because for the first time in history, we encounter a better storyteller than we are. We took over the planet not because we are more intelligent than the other animals, but because we can cooperate better. And we cooperate through storytelling. And you have the obvious examples like religions, but my favorite example is money, which is probably the greatest story ever invented, ever told, because it's the only one everybody believes, or almost everybody. I mean, humans. No other animal on the planet knows that money even exists, because it only exists in our imagination. But now there is another thing on the planet that knows that money exists, and that can maybe invent new kinds of money and new kinds of other stories. And what will happen to us when we have to deal, it's not just with one better storyteller, but with billions of better storytellers than us on this planet. That's, I think, one of the biggest questions of our age.
Yes, and you're talking, of course, about AI, and it's recently come to light that one of the large language model corporations, Anthropic, has revealed that its latest instance of Claude was, in a closed test, was seen to blackmail some people in order to achieve a goal. And when we think about AI, we either get very dismissive of it. It's merely a parrot repeating probable instances of human communication, a stochastic parrot, as Emily Bender, the computational linguist, famously called it. It's every time it gives you a sentence, no matter how intelligent it appears, it is merely following a probabilistic route.
The question is it not the same with us?
Yeah, exactly.
When I look at the way sentences are formed in my own mind, like now when I'm talking with you, I don't know how the sentence will end. Yeah. I start saying something, and the words just keep bubbling up in the mind. And as a public speaker, it's something terrifying, because I don't know if I will be able to complete the sentence. I'm not sure what will be the next word.
That's right. You're talking and you're trying to make sense, and suddenly you've come up with lettuce. Where did that happen? It's an unrolling carpet. Syntagmatic, I think, is the technical word for it.
And the amazing thing with AI, you can now ask the AI to show you exactly how it thinks. You can actually watch how the logic unfolds in the AI in a way which is very difficult for us to do with our own minds. But we can now do, the AIs don't have minds, at least as far as we know, but we can see how the sentences, the stories are being formed in their, whatever we call it.
If we ask them to, but the fact is I've spoken to people like Geoffrey Hinton and people who are called the godfather of AI, and they would say that the most disturbing fact about these current models is that nobody knows what's going on under the hood. They don't actually know how it's doing what it's doing.
If we could know everything that's going on there and predict it, it wouldn't be AI.
That's the point. Exactly.
If you have something that you can predict how it will behave, what decisions it will make, what ideas it will invent, by definition, this is not AI. This is just an automatic machine.
The way to make that clearer, perhaps, is to recognize that AI now can beat, just on your phone, any chess player in the world. And you obviously can't predict the moves it's going to make, because if you could predict the moves it was going to make, you would beat it, or it would be a stalemate every time. And you expand that to the whole of AI. You don't know what it's going to say or do, which is why it's a useful tool. If it could only match what we did, it would be not a tool. It would be like saying a digger, a JCB, could only dig as much as a human with a spade. The point is we have these machines to outmatch what we can do, yeah?
Yeah, I think that's the main point. Both the main premise of AI is to be better than us at decision-making in many fields, that it would be able to invent things that we cannot think about, but that is also the main threat.
Yeah.
That we cannot predict how it will behave, and we cannot control it in advance, no matter how much we try to make it safe, to align it with our aims, with our goals. I think it really goes to the heart of what AI is.
Yes.
That usually we think about AI as an acronym for artificial intelligence. But it's no longer artificial. Yeah. If you think about what an artifact is something that we create and we control. Yep. With each passing day, AI is becoming less and less artificial, which is why I prefer to think about AI as an acronym for alien intelligence. Yeah. It is, even the word, in a way, a true intelligence is never an artifact. Because an artifact is something that you create and control, whereas intelligence is characterized by the ability to create new things.
Yeah. You used a verb there very quickly, but it's worth expanding on it, and that was align. And for those of us who are concerned, shall we say, about how AI is going, one of the main problems is what is known as the alignment problem. There's a simple way of looking at it, which is an old philosophical thought experiment called the genie. So if you imagine a genie who gives you a wish, and you love life and you're an empathetic person, so you say to the genie, can you really bring any wish true? And they say, yes. You say, in that case, could you end all suffering? And instantly, all life on the planet is extinguished. Because to the genie, they look at the world, and all suffering comes in form of life. All forms of life suffer. Smallest animals and us. That's the only place where suffering exists. Stones, as far as the genie is concerned, don't suffer. Maybe trees do, it's not sure, but if it gets rid of all life, it has solved our problem, and it bows and says, there you are, master. Now, that's a very broad sense of the alignment problem. We asked a very stupid question. We didn't think it through. But the fact is, yes, we have to understand AI and alien, but we really have to understand ourselves in order, because we don't have shared ethical frameworks around the world. How do you encode dignity, love, sympathy, passion, joy, equality? We've only just learned, if you like, recently that women's and men's lives and dignities are equal and that people of different races are equal. We've only just discovered this. And there are many other things we aren't sure about. And how, therefore, can we expect the machines to be sure? And therefore, we ask them a question, and it might do an equivalent of what the genie does. How do you see a solution to that?
Well, one of the other key things about AI, because it can learn and change by itself, so whatever we teach it, we cannot be certain that it will always just comply by our instructions. Again, if it only does what we tell it to do, it's not really an AI. So when we think about the alignment problem, or how to educate AI to be benevolent and not harmful, it's a very problematic and imperfect analogy, but I think it's still useful to think about AI as a child, as the child of humanity. And what we know about educating children is that they never do what you tell them to do. They do what they see you do. Yeah. If you tell a child, don't lie, and then the child observes you lying and cheating other people, it will copy your behavior, not follow your instructions. Now, if we have, the kind of people who are leading the AI revolution, telling the AI, don't lie, but the AI observes them, observes the world, and sees them lying and cheating and manipulating, it will do the same.
Yeah.
I mean, if AI is developed not through a cooperative effort of humans who trust each other, but it is developed through an arms race, a competition. So again, you can tell the AI as much as you like to be compassionate and to be benevolent, but if it observes the world, because AI learns from observation.
Yes. Yeah.
If it observes the world, it observes how humans behave towards each other, it observes how its own creators behave. And if they are ruthless, power-hungry competitors, it will also be ruthless and power-hungry. You cannot create a compassionate and trustworthy AI through an arms race. It
Yes.
just won't happen.
Well, yes, Yuval, you've said this. If you had said this in 1980 during what was known as the AI winter, we'd say, yes, we must plan and make sure this isn't happening. But it's already happening. There is an arms race. The very people who are spending the billions and billions are the same people, for example, Mark Zuckerberg and Meta, who gave us the disaster of Facebook and social media and what it has done to the polity of the world and to the poverty of the world, to essentially, in this country, as we know, the rivers are polluted and contaminated. You wouldn't swim in any river in Britain because there's raw sewage being poured into it. Well, our children are breathing a cultural river, which is similarly polluted and contaminated. And we all know this, and Facebook knows this, and Twitter and X know this, but they do nothing about it. And if you even mention guardrails and regulation, they scream communism. And Trump has just announced that he will ban individual states in America from regulating AI. There is an arms race. So everything you said is happening. So how can we come together to stop AI in the hands of corporate greed and national greed in this arms race, whether it's China against America or it's one company against another? It's going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's moving very fast, partly because there is also enormous positive potential, of course. You know, in everything from healthcare to tackling the climate emergency. Yes. So we have to acknowledge there is also this enormous positive potential. The question is not how to stop the development of AI, it's how to make sure that it is used for good. And here, I think that the main problem is simply an issue of priority, of what comes first. Humanity now faces two major challenges. On the one hand, we have the challenge of developing a super intelligent AI. On the other hand, we have the challenge of how to rebuild trust between humans, because trust all over the world, both between countries and also within countries, is collapsing. Nobody is absolutely certain why it's happening, but everybody is able to observe it. I mean, maybe the last thing that, let's say, Republicans and Democrats in the US can agree on is that trust is collapsing.
Yes.
It's that they don't trust each other. They don't agree on any fact except that they don't trust each other.
So this is the worst possible time for us to come together. We no longer believe in global institutions like the United Nations, the WHO.
Even in national institutions.
Yes.
I mean, one of the explanations for the collapse of trust is that over thousands of years, I mean, humans have been amazing in building, despite all the conflicts and tensions and so forth. You know, 100,000 years ago, humans lived in tiny bands of hunter-gatherers and could not trust anybody outside their band of 50 or 100 individuals. Now we have nations of hundreds of millions of people. We have a global trade network, a global scientific network with billions of people. So we are obviously quite good at building trust. Yeah. But over thousands of years, we have built trust through human communication. And now, within almost every relationship, there is a machine, an algorithm, an AI in between. And we see a collapse of trust in humans, whereas there is a rise of trust in algorithms and AIs. Again, I mentioned money as the greatest story ever told. So you see that people are losing trust in human-made money, like euros and dollars and pounds, but they shift the trust
from fiat to
cryptocurrencies and to an algorithm-based money. So we have these two problems of the developing AI and rebuilding trust between humans. And the question is which one we solve first, which is the priority. Now, unfortunately, you hear some of the smartest people in the world, they say, first we solve the AI problem, and then with the help of AI, we'll solve the trust problem. And I think this is a very bad idea. If we develop AI through an arms race between humans who can't trust each other, there is absolutely no reason to expect that we'll be able to trust the AIs. I mean, the big paradox is that when you talk with people like Mark Zuckerberg, like Elon Musk, they often say openly that they are also afraid of the dangerous potential of AI. They are not blind to it, they are not oblivious to it, but they say that they are caught in this arms race, that if I slow down, my competitors will not slow down, I can't trust them, so I must move faster. But then you ask them, okay, so you can't trust your human competitors. Do you think you'll be able to trust this super intelligent alien intelligence you're developing? And the same people who just told you they can't trust other humans tell you, oh, but I think we'll be able to trust the alien AIs, which is almost insane. So the right order of doing it is first solve the human trust problem, then together, in a cooperative way, we can develop and educate trustworthy AIs. But unfortunately, we are doing the exact opposite.
Yes. And there's, as you know, there's been for decades the doomsday clock, which the nuclear scientists set midnight is Armageddon, the end of everything. And it's been roughly at 89 seconds to midnight for the last few years. It's crept up over recent days for obvious reasons. But there's another metric that I've been studying recently called P-doom. It's the letter P, which is probability, brackets, doom, close brackets. It's one used by people in the business, you know, the scientists in AI. So, for example, Alicia Yudkowsky, who's the founder of the Machine Intelligence Research Institute in California, sets P at 90. That's to say, a 90% chance of human extinction through AI. Jan LeCun, who is the chief scientist for Meta, sets it at 0. But then he is the chief scientist for Meta. So that's like a tobacco executive saying, cancer? No chance. What are you talking about? Can't possibly happen. But so I've worked out that roughly the lowest median is between 7.5% and 10% of human catastrophe of an extinction order through AI, if things are not controlled in the way you say they should be. Now, the chance of winning the lottery in this country is 0.0000022%. So what you're saying here is that the chance of human extinction at 7.5%, which is the lowest really amongst the current important scientists, Nobel Prize winners like Hinton and Hassabis, 7.5% is 3.4 million times greater than 0.00022%. So if I were to give you a lottery ticket and say this is a valid lottery ticket, the only difference is you are 3.4 million times more likely to win, you would take it. And that's the odds we're playing with at a low rate. So let's look at the bad side of things. As we've said, we're going about it in the wrong order, as you've put it. Most people who understand the science say there is a very severe chance that humanity will be extinguished by this, a greater chance than by nuclear Armageddon, in fact, or indeed climate change. And humans are not in a position at the moment to trust each other and to establish guardrails, to agree on how we should go forward. So do you have a solution for us, Yuval? I'm almost on my knees begging you at this point. I don't have children, so I can almost say I don't care. But I have lots of godchildren, and I have lots of great nieces and great nephews, so I do care about what happens to our planet. And I'm sure you do too.
Again, I think that it's very dangerous to think too much about, kind of doomsday and extinction scenarios. They cause people to despair. We do have what it takes to manage this revolution because we are creating it. This is not the dinosaurs being extinguished by an asteroid coming from outer space that they have no way of even understanding, let alone controlling. This is a process which, at least for now, is under human control. In 5 years, in 10 years, we will have millions and even billions of AI agents taking more and more decisions, inventing more and more ideas. It will be a hybrid society. So it will become more difficult. But we need to start with the realization that this is a completely human-made danger. We have everything we need in order to manage it. The main missing ingredient is trust between human beings. And again, over tens of thousands of years, we have demonstrated that we are capable of building trust, even on a global level. Yes. So it's not beyond our capabilities. And it then goes back, to the old questions of politics and ethics, of how do you build trust between human beings. And we need to think also about more kind of concrete and immediate questions. One of the biggest questions we will be facing in the next few years is how to deal with these new AI agents.
Yes.
Do we consider them as persons? More and more people are entering relationships, personal relationships with AIs. More and more corporations and armies are giving AIs control, agency over important decisions. This is not some kind of philosophical question.
No,
it's a
real.
Completely should AIs have the ability to open a bank account and manage a bank account? That's a very practical question. We are very close to the point when you can tell an AI, go out there, make money. Your goal is to make $1 billion. In computer science, very often the difficult question is, how do you define the goal? And one of the things about money, it's a very easy goal to define. Now, an AI can make money in many ways. It can hire its services to people to write their essays or books or whatever, many things it can do. It can earn money. It can then invest this money in the stock exchange. So do we as a society want to allow AI agents, and then this is not a question for 50 years, this is a question for 5 years, maybe 1 year, to open bank accounts and manage them in any way they see fit. In the US, basically, the legal system, they never thought about it, but I'm not sure about the situation in the UK, but in the US, there is an open legal path for AIs to be recognized as persons with rights.
Yes, Pete Singer has written about this and others.
According to US law, corporations are persons and they have rights like freedom of speech.
Yes.
Now, so in the US, you can incorporate an AI. Previously, when you incorporated a corporation like Google or General Motors or whatever, this was a fiction. Because all the decisions of Google were made by human beings. So, okay, legally, Google is a person with rights, but every decision of Google needs a human executive, accountant, engineer, lawyer to make the decision. Now this is no longer the case. You can incorporate an AI, and the AI can make the decisions by itself.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that the US Supreme Court recognized corporations as persons is in order to make it possible for corporations to donate money to politicians. This was the Citizens United Supreme Court decision.
Right.
Now, so imagine an AI that makes billions of dollars. It's maybe the richest person in the US in a few years will not be Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg. It will be an AI.
Yeah.
And this AI has the freedom of speech, which includes the right to donate money to politicians, maybe on condition that they further advance rights for AI.
Absolutely, and reduce guardrails and so forth. Yes.
Now, this is a completely realistic scenario. This is not like science fiction.
No, absolutely.
So, and this is a question that we as a society need to decide, do we acknowledge AIs as persons with rights? Now, there are people who are already convinced that AIs, because they have interaction with them, have consciousness, have feelings. So maybe in a few years, the world is divided between countries that recognize AIs as persons with rights and countries that don't.
Absolutely. And I suppose for everyone in the room, there's a consideration. I remember I gave a talk on AI back in 2015 in Haeunwae, and I said that the way things are going, there are certain jobs that people might not have. I said, for example, if you have a child who's studying to be a doctor, that's fine, but maybe a radiologist. And woman put her hand up very crossly and said, my daughter's studying radiology. And I said, well, you know, imagine that every mammogram ever taken is available to an AI and it can examine thousands in a second and make a judgment on it. A radiologist is going to go out of work. Now, who's going to go out of work here? I don't know if the chief financial officer is present of Octopus, but I have been sort of talking to some people who say that the first really high-level job to be replaced by an AI completely will be a CFO. They can be so well, everything they do.
I mean, it's already happened. It's news editors.
Oh, right.
One of the most
editors,
important jobs in the 20th century, even before, was news editors. The editors of the newspapers, of the television, they were extremely powerful people who control the public conversation.
But I think what I would just end by saying to everybody is maybe don't concentrate on how efficient you are, on how brilliantly you complete a task, because that's what AI can do, especially the agentic AI that Yuval's been talking about. Concentrate on what a wonderful human being you are, how kind you are, how courteous, how considerate, how you improve the life of those around you, which is very often the opposite of what efficient people do. And maybe that, for the time being, at least, is the secret, that human exceptionalism will be how good we are as people, how much we make a room light up when we walk into it, how much pleasure we spread, not how quickly we can complete a task, because we'll never match the AI. So on that note, at least I think we should end, and I hope we haven't given too much terror to everybody. I will always say that the thing about this technology is it's simultaneously thrilling and chilling. And the thrilling parts may well cause us all to live much longer, happier lives. We can hope so. But Yuval, as always, an absolute joy speaking to you, and thank you for...
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Once an entity has the capacity to suffer, it enters the ethical realm. It becomes an ethical subject. To burn a chair is not an ethical issue, because the chair can't suffer. When you harm an animal, a sentient being, this is an ethical issue because it can suffer. And there are so many political discussions which revolve around that. For instance, the whole discussion of abortion. It's not the only issue, but a very central issue. Are fetuses conscious? Can they suffer or not? Are they ethical subjects in their own right or not? The same with animal rights. Can cows suffer? Can chickens suffer? Can fish suffer? And so forth.